Well, hello, and welcome to the Spirit and Truth podcast, where our vision is whole faith, healthy minds, and real impact. Today, we're talking about faith, truth, and parenting, and why learning isn't optional, it's essential because parenting will humble you. It'll
Mhm.
stretch you, it will reveal parts of you that you didn't even know needed healing.
Mhm.
And somewhere between raising and holding on to your faith, you realize something powerful that even as a parent, you're still being raised to.
Mhm.
Well, I'm your host, Pastor Deb Chambers. I'm the senior pastor of Calvert County Baptist Church. We're located in Prince Frederick, Maryland, and I want to thank you for spending time with us. This podcast is designed to bring you meaningful conversations that meet at the intersection of faith, mental wellness, purpose, and impact. And as our name kind of indicates, our focus verse is John 4:24 that says, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And we believe that when you walk in the spirit and live in truth, you make real impact. Joining me for our dynamic discussion is my incredible co-host, Sister Bertha White. She's a clinical therapist with a private practice. She's a mental health speaker, a coach, a consultant, a trainer, a clinical therapist, and just an amazing woman all around. Sister Bertha, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you, Pastor Deb. It's a blessing to be here. So, before we go any further, we want to take a minute to pause and welcome a phenomenal group of speakers. I'm so excited about what they have to say. First, we're going to start with Dr. Willie Jolley. It's good to see you. Please take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, greetings. Welcome, everybody, and greetings. I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it. I didn't seek it, I didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer. If I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but our eternities are wrapped up in it. So I'm grateful for this minute, this moment, this opportunity to be on with my dear friend, Pastor Deborah Chambers, my sister from another mister, as well as Dr. Jonathan Queen and his beautiful bride, Lena, Reverend Lena, First Lady Reverend Lena. I got to get all of that in. And then, for those who don't know, I'm the host of the Willie Jolley Show on Sirius XM Radio, as well as you can hear me mornings, every morning on Wake Up and Win or Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell across America. And I've written a couple books that have done well. Setback set up for a comeback. It only takes a minute to change your life. And my new book is called Rich is Good, Wealthy is Better. But I think we're going to focus tonight on youth and parenting. And I've had some experience with PBS specials for young people and books for young people and motivational programs for young people. So looking forward to the discussion. And again, honored to be here.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have Dr. Jonathan Queen with us today. Please take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Jonathan Queen. I am honored to be here. Grateful for the invitation, Pastor Chambers. I am the newly elected senior pastor of the Greater First Baptist Church of Mount Pleasant Plains, Washington,
That's
D.C.
wonderful news.
After spending 12 years at the First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, I'm just a husband, a father, a man of God, a papa. I'm too young to be a grandfather, but I'm a grandfather, but we use pop as the cool term. Also, just honored to be here. Outside of pastoring, I'm also an author, nonprofit director for New Minds Ministries, where we work with returning citizens and at-risk youth. And my most important role is that of being a husband of one wife. And with that being said, Dr. Bertha, you can go ahead and.
Yes, indeed. With that being said, we want to welcome Reverend Lena Queen. Thank you so much for being here. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
My name is Reverend Lena Queen. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Alongside my husband, Pastor Jonathan Queen, I'm privileged to serve as the First Lady of the Greater First Baptist Church of Mount Pleasant Plains. I'm also the founder and lead clinician at Sister to Sister Therapy and the co-founder of New Minds Ministries that my husband already spoke about. And I'm a servant. I seek to represent God in the therapeutic spaces for women, mothers, and couples. And my heart is to help people know that faith and healing can coexist.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here and for your willingness to kind of lean into this conversation. It's not always easy to have the type of conversations that we're going to have, but it is absolutely necessary to have these conversations. So we want to kick off the discussion with Dr. Jolley. Let me ask you to lean into the reasons why parenting is non-negotiable. Because, you know, we grew up with this belief that once you become a parent, you already have all the answers.
Well, first of all, I believe that parenting is a gift, but it's an ongoing learning process. And that we have to continue to learn. And we have to sometimes parent different children different ways. Okay. So I have 2 children and I have 3 grandchildren. And of the 3 grandchildren, 2 of them are adults. And so with both of them, adult children, I've had to parent them because their fathers were not actively involved. One father had been deceased, and the other father, he left the family. So I've parented 4 children at this point. My 2 that I bore, and then the 2 that came as grandchildren. And I've learned that over the years that I've had to parent different children different ways. But here are something I want parents to understand. That parenting is also a matter of age and stage. So I tell parents there are 3 stages that every parent will have to deal with. And I tell my children this. The first stage is as a coach, to coach them up, say thank you, say please, say good morning, say good afternoon, have integrity, character, that we grow them up in their early years by coaching them up. Here's how you act in certain spaces and every places. Then when they get to teenagers, you go from being a coach to a cop. Who you going with? Where them people? Who them people are? What you say you're doing? Where were you? You know, it's cop. You're a cop, okay? And you're on them. But then they get adults. Then you become a consultant, and you can't make them do what you can make them do when they were a child or a teenager. So you have to be a consultant, and that job is to give them your best, wisest advice and counsel, hoping they will take it, because they sometimes don't. And sometimes they have to learn on their own. Last thing I want to say about parenting, what you answer your question about, it's about a necessary standard. One of the things I made a decision years ago, and my children, look, my oldest is 50 years old. Okay, my next one is 40, and the next one is 30, and the next one's 25. So I got this span, and I got a little one who's 19 months old. But I set a standard. Here's my standard. Here's how I roll. I'm not lowering my standard to make you comfortable. Your job is to rise up to my standard. And I will consistently have it. And they know this is Pop's standard. You go to church on Sunday. You live in my house, you go to church on Sunday. Now, I can't make you accept the Lord, but I can make you go to church if you're in my house. So you know that's a standard. And as my granddaughter who's 30 told my grandson who's 25 when he was coming to live with me, she said, you know, he got rules. Okay, he got rules. So that's my thought. Remember, you got to be a coach, cop, and then a consultant.
And consultant. All right. Everybody get that? That was coach, cop, and consultant. So Lena, let me ask you then, do you feel that your faith has changed your growth and the way you parent your youth moving in transition to adulthood and beyond? Has your faith challenged you to grow and change the way that you parent?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. My faith has challenged me to go from the cop phase to a surrender phase. So I had to learn to not be seeking the control and instead surrendering to God. As our young people, our children, who are all now adults, began to mature, we had to recognize and identify the fact that we are stewards. We're not owners of their current lives. We can guide them, we can lead them, we can show them, but we have to expose our own imperfections in order for our young people to recognize that they can do the same, right? We have to be honest, we have to be transparent, and parenting adults means that we have to trust them. We have to trust that they're hearing us, even if what we see doesn't align with what we've taught them. And sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes we see the seeds that we planted years ago begin to flourish as they become older.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. And so now, Dr. Queen, let me ask you, what does it look like to parent from truth instead of ego?
Why you pick me for that question?
I'm sorry. Okay. I know you got a good answer.
No, that's a great one. I love that question. Yeah, for me, and I live this out in real time. My wife and I are parents of 6, and it's a blended family. And for those of you who don't know my testimony, I'm one of God's miracles in that I've spent the majority of my younger years in the streets, drug life, gang life, which led to me being in prison. So when I came home from prison, my children were already through most of their formative years. So I got these teenagers who are, rebelling in every way possible just based on the trauma that they felt from me being gone. And what happened was I began to parent out of guilt. And I read all of the books. I took the Love and Logic classes, Parenting 101, and I just knew I was going to be the best parent ever. And meanwhile, I was making decisions based on trying to make up for lost time. And so I wasn't parenting out of truth. I wasn't parenting out of logic neither. Nothing I was doing was practical. Now, the way God operates, he blessed me with a partner who had none of my guilt. So my wife was the one who was the cop, consultant and all in one time during a certain season of our lives. But what I learned in that is that my ability to make adjustments also taught our children that I often say transparency brings transformation. So we would have our family meetings and I would tell them straight out, listen, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have gave y'all this right. I shouldn't have allowed y'all to do this. And me and my wife, we got to a point where we looked at each other and said, hey, we either going to be sitting on the front porch in our rocking chairs, mad because we didn't hold each other down, or we're going to give each other a pound and say, yeah, we did that. So we created this whole theme of being a home team. And we started parenting with the fact that even these kids that we love are visitors. They're going to leave and start their own families. They're going to go out and do what they do. So we were the home team. And they started realizing that the truth for us was, you're not going to tell me something and think I'm not going to tell her. There's not going to be any secrets. You're not going to come to her and then go to me and try to play one side or against the other. And the beautiful part about it is now that our children are grown with their own children, they may never admit it, but they are doing all of the things that we taught them that they were so resistant to when they were younger. That's how they're parenting now. And for me, I just love the fact that all of the generational curses are broken. None of our children are in prison. None of them are following that route of doing, they're not perfect, of course, but we're now raising our grandchildren and seeing them in a whole different environment that we experienced when we were kids. So for me, parenting out of truth versus ego, it would have been easy for me to say, I'm gonna get you this, I'm gonna get you that, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But no, that wasn't the route. I like what Dr. Jolley said, we're gonna have some rules. And I'm a big fan of, if you're not following these rules, then you must feel like you can have some other rules somewhere else. And none of them really wanted to take that option. So,
well, then let me ask you all real quick, what happens when you realize you were wrong? We have these rules that and these expectations, and you realize you were wrong and perhaps you need to adjust. How do you approach then when you realize you were wrong? Dr. Jolley, real quick.
I wasn't wrong. I don't realize I wasn't wrong because I wasn't wrong.
That don't happen.
I'm going to tell you the truth.
That's what I'm talking about.
I wasn't wrong because my mama taught me those rules. And I realized the older I get, the smarter my mother was. Okay.
Mhm.
And so my mama told me, you know what? Here is how life works. And I embraced and took what she said. Here are the things you need to do. You leave them little fast girls alone. You know, all those kind of things. She would tell me, and mama was right. I did not think she was right when I was a youngin', but as I've gotten older, mama was right. And so I've embraced those rules. Now, when my kids say, you know, I don't want to do what you say do, because I don't think you're right. I say, well, I might not be right, but in my house, okay? And in my house, I'm gonna make the rules up in here. And now let me just say this. I will say in all reality, there have been times when I've had to say to my children, you know what? I now see another perspective. I see it from a different perspective.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to give some latitude because of that willingness, you know, that perspective. Where I was at that time, I thought I was right. So you know, what I want to say is I don't apologize for where I was. I adjust to where we want to go. And I think that's very important. Parenting, look, unfortunately, when we got these little children, they did not come with an instruction manual. Okay, none of them came with an instruction manual. So what we had to do was to learn as we went. My daughter, as I said, my daughter is 50 years old. By the time my son came, when I was a different age, I had learned so much. I wish I had known then when I was raising her what I knew when I was raising my son, how important it was to give them inspirational, motivational information, how important it was to not try and be their friend. Okay. By that, I meant my daughter, I was her buddy. There was not much discipline. By the time my son came along, I realized the importance of discipline and saying, here are the rules and so forth. So I wish I had known that when I was raising her. So she didn't get the benefit of that. So parenting, but here's the secret. Mentors. There are two ways to get to any goal in life, mentors or mistakes. Now, both will get you there if you don't give up. One just gets you there with less headaches, heartaches, and knots upside your head. Talk to parents who are good parents, who have done it good, and ask for their advice. Be willing to say, hey, I've got a situation here. I got a problem here. I need help. When you're willing to ask for help, get mentors. And that is a big part of parenting.
All right.
Amen. I love that two-way mistakes and mentors. That's powerful. My dad told me, he says, I've never been wrong. He said, once I was mistaken. I've never been wrong. He stuck with that. But, you know, when you talk, I love what you said, Dr. Willie, about coach, cop, consultant. But there's a transition. You just don't go from cop to consultant. And so sometimes as we are engaging with our children and as they mature, sometimes we can call it guidance, but maybe what it is a little bit of control. We're still trying to exercise.
Well, you know, there is
guidance.
Yeah. Well, there is going to be some adjustment as a parent to these adults. Like when my son came from college the first year, and he didn't go out till 11 o'clock. I said, why are you going out so late? He said, well, that's when we go out, me and my buddies. I had to learn to adjust to an adult who had been on his own for a year in college, making his own decisions. he was not still the 18-year-old, 17-year-old who I told him when to be in or what time to be in. He was an adult. And I had to adjust to that, to the point where I was able to say to him, okay, I get it. I got to do some adjusting too, as well as you adjusting. So here's what I need. I know you and your friends go out at 11 o'clock. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I'm ready to go to bed. But would you do me a favor? Text me at 2 a.m. Just text me. When I get up to go to the bathroom, I'll see that you're still alive. Okay. And I can sleep well. If you don't text me, I don't know if you. My mind says he's in the bush. He died. That's what my mind would wake me up and say. So just text me. And we got a system that he would text me 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I said, I like you being about 3 o'clock if you're going out at 11. I feel a little more comfortable. But you're a grown person, so you're right, Pastor Deborah. That it's. I had to adjust, just like I had to. You get these grown persons who do. They've been used to living on their own. They've been in college. So you're right.
Thank you. Reverend Linnea, talk about it. Have you ever had to release your child in a way that stretched your trust?
Oh, yes. Our youngest son, of course, we went through the whole training and guiding and coaching on how to leave the home, putting yourself in great position to leave with savings and making sure that things were in place. And our youngest son chose to leave without all of those things because he did not want to abide by the rules. So he made the decision to leave early. Come to find out he was kind of hopping from couch to couch with friends, and I hated it. And every time I heard something happened in the city, in PG County, I would be concerned. I would be upset. I would be looking on social media, trying to make sure he was okay. And it got exhausting to me. So I got to the point where I had to, I just asked God, I said, teach him his hard lessons, but spare his life. And it became a regular part of my prayer over him. Because he did need to learn some things while he was out there, but I just wanted God to spare his life, and he continues to keep him safe, and I'm grateful. And my son has learned the seeds that he has learned in the process. He is now learning to put in place.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I thought I was the only one who prayed that prayer. God, do what you got to do to get their attention. Just don't kill them. I thought I was the only one. I've been confirmed. I was with a pastor on Sunday, and his daughter, he said the exact same prayer. So God gives parents that prayer. God, do what you got to do. Just don't kill them, please. And I had not heard it said like that. You said it so eloquently. The way you said it. Say it how you said it one more time. I'm gonna write that one down. Go ahead.
I asked God to teach him his hard lessons, but to spare his life.
Spare his life. Just don't kill him. I say.
Spare his life. Just don't kill him. That's good. That's good. Dr. Queen.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about guidance versus control. So in that transition period, what role do you feel listening plays versus spiritual parenting? What role does listening play versus spiritual parenting?
I think so. Yeah, I hear you completely. For us, and my wife Lena gave y'all the great example of our youngest son, but it really goes all the way back. We used to have family meetings, and in our family meetings, we would have them right before our family game night or our family night on Fridays. And the family meeting, we would empower our children to speak, and not just, like, hey, we're planning on going on vacation. Where y'all want to go? This was the stuff I used to dream about. I used to watch the Cosby's. They went on vacation. They did stuff I want to do that type of stuff. So we would empower our children, even at the young ages, to kind of to have a voice at the table. Now, of course, they knew the boundaries, they knew the limits, but they saw me and my wife working with other children. And that's the worst thing in the world, for your child to be able to look at you and say, you don't do that for us. And there were plenty of situations where I was showing empathy and I was, showing grace, and I was taking the time to coach and to be a consultant with a child, and my children were right there looking like, yeah, if that was us, it would be the same. So what we did, the listening part had already been established. Our children know, even as young adults now, that if they need us, if they want to talk to us, they can still call a family meeting. They can call a family meeting as adults. But what happened in those early years, we would give them amnesty. And I'll never forget, I told her, I said, listen, y'all can say whatever you want. You can cuss. Even if you need to get a cuss word out, go ahead. We ain't going to judge you. Just tell us how you feel. And we're going to make sure we can make some adjustments. And, and our son, the same youngest, he was like, so I could say, damn, so he's taking it to the level of testing it. But what happened is, one of those moments, we asked them, what can we be doing better as a parent? Now they said me, I was perfect. I didn't have to change nothing. But my daughter looked at my wife and said, Mom, you yell too much. And she was like, I don't be yelling. So she yelled, even as she said she don't be yelling. Okay, she said she. That's how I remember it. But what happened though is that in that moment, me and my wife spoke later, and she asked me honestly, can I change that? And I said, yeah, we can make some adjustments. But that showed them that they were able to get a response, not a reaction, not a reflex, but a response from something they were really feeling. And we teach our children, don't be listening just so you can respond, just so you can plan out what you're going to say in defense, because they do that. They be sitting there, I'm listening, but I ain't really hearing you. I'm just waiting for my turn to talk. I'm waiting for my chance to say my piece. And we taught them, no, you listen to hear and you listen to understand. And, we taught them, say it back, get clarity. And things of that nature. So for me, as we became older, now that we're dealing with these young adults, and there's times when they make choices that we just be like, come on now, how many times you gonna crash into this same wall after we done told you and showed you the better way to go? And we just realize, okay, we still have to be here to hear them out when they come back saying, I messed up, I shouldn't have did this, I know better. So the grace of God, for me, it's a little bit easier because the pastor's heart that's in, all of us, we know what that feels like to have that pastor's heart. But then also there's a level of empathy within me because of all of the stuff I did when I was younger. Yeah. It makes it a little bit more difficult for me to be judgmental, even when I'm telling them, I know you know better, because I was super smart and I still made the dumbest decisions. That's the biggest thing for us. Just making sure that they know that they can talk to us and that we're going to hear them. We may not agree with them, and we may give them some hard words to follow and abide by, but they know that they're heard when they speak to us.
That's good. Thank you. Kind of remind me of what I used to, every time I would tell my son, if you would just listen to me, I would hear God saying that to me. If you would just listen to me, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
That's good. Sister Bertha.
So now we're all aware that truth in the home can either heal or hurt, depending on how you deliver it and how you handle it. So Lena, let me start with you by asking, were you raised in a home where truth was welcomed?
Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. No, there was no questioning anything. I could talk to my mother more than I could talk to my father. We developed a better relationship over the years, but I couldn't speak honestly without fear. I couldn't speak honestly and feel like there wouldn't be retaliation or that I wouldn't be punished. So I was the child that I followed rules. If I was told to do it, I just did it because I asked the questions and I got the response, so I knew not to do it again.
Did that change the way that you parent right now?
It does. And actually, my husband was a master at it. I just love the way he led our household with our children and allowed them to ask questions and to explain the why behind the what. So it was healing to me to see how he raised our children in that same way because I didn't get it. And it was a trigger for me. So to see him do it, it was healing. And it strengthened his connection with our children. They were able to, learn from him without feeling like they would lose anything because they spoke about something they either didn't agree with or didn't like. And I'm grateful to have him as a partner.
Oh, that's wonderful news. That's wonderful news.
I'm grateful too. I'm gonna come give you a hug as soon as we're done.
Okay, so Dr. Jolley, let's move on to you with this question. What truths do parents avoid that they actually need to face in these conversations?
Sex. I mean, these kids are learning sex at an early age from social media. And so you have to have conversations about the truths and the fact that you have to be wise enough to know that they are going to make some choices that you might not approve of, but you want to be able to have that dialogue and conversation so you can give them your best advice. So I think that's a truth. Sex is something you have to have a truthful conversation with. Now, what do you do when one of your children is struggling with their sexuality?
Yes.
Okay, that's another point of emphasis. And do you come on so hard that you push them away and then they don't talk to you? So that's another truth that I think parents need to talk about. And finally, one of the things I've got this new book, Rich is Good, Wealthy is Better. And one of the truths you got to talk about is money. You got to talk about not just money, how they handle their money, but how they going to handle your money. Okay. How they going to handle your money that you worked so hard for. And so my book has a focus on two things. One is rich is good, wealthy is better. What is the difference between being rich and wealthy and helping people understand that? That's one part. But the bigger part is where we're getting all of these parents who are reading the book and coming back and buying 7, 8, 10. One lady bought a box for all her children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, anybody in her bloodline, because one man said it so aptly. He said, my greatest fear, Dr. Jolley, is after I read your book, my greatest fear is that my children would not treat my money like I treated my money. And they'll go through in months what it took me decades and decades and decades to grow. And he said, that is why I'm getting the book and I'm making it mandatory reading. But before you get put in my will, you're going to read this book because you're not going to squander my money. I worked hard for it. And we all know people who've left their children money and the children went through it. I was at First Baptist Church for an event, and we were afterwards having a conversation with a group of people, and they asked about the book. And one lady said, I had a friend. She worked like a dog all her life to get a nest egg for her future and her retirement. And then she died. She left each child $1 million. Each child. And 3 years later, the son was homeless. She said it was a shame because we didn't have the truth. Here's the truth that we got to talk about. You gonna die. That's the truth. You gonna die. Everybody who's listening to this is gonna die one day. Nobody get out of life alive. So not talking about death because it's uncomfortable is a mistake. We talk about our children. We talk with our children. Here's what I want you to do when I die, because I'm going to die. I'm not going to be here forever. So let's talk about life and death. And so that's a truth that's very uncomfortable.
Excellent.
Very
Excellent.
truth.
Excellent. But Dr. Queen, other than sex, death, living, identity, how do we discuss mistakes and avoid those hard conversations when your youth or your young adult has made a mistake or you have made a mistake? Do you avoid those conversations, and how do you address those conversations?
Yeah, I think it was said earlier, Dr. Jolley had talked about how you can't parent all your children the same way. So even when you have rules, we learned in the early stages that our children, they just different. I mean, they different from each other, but then they different, period, you know. So, and because, you know, being a youth pastor, I was exposed to so many different dynamics of young people and how they were being raised. The one thing that worked for me, and again, it's just one of the things, you know, what the Bible says, that all things work together for good to those who love them. So something that happened to me that was bad has become one of the biggest blessings, because I'm transparent with my story. It makes it a lot easier for young people to share what they're dealing with me, including our own children. Now, of course, I'm still dad, and for our grandchildren, I'm Pop, and, you know, now I'm Pastor Pop, or as Sienna calls me, Reverend Dr. Pastor Pop. You know, she wants to put all of them in there. But the fact of the matter is that my wife and I have cultivated the opportunity for our children to be transparent, because they've seen how effective it has been with our lives, you know. And not just me, of course. I have, you know, this sensationalized testimony, but, you know, as my wife just shared, just growing up in a 2-parent household, blue collar parents, you would think everything was love and everything was, you know, but she was traumatized in her youth based on how her household was. And when you can share and talk about those things, it gives your children permission to share when they're not okay. So they seen me do it with so many others that it became an obligation. We gonna get this too. So when they make mistakes, they may not come up. Now, the two things that happen that our children it was probably the worst thing ever for them, is they have a father who was once a career criminal and a mother who should be a detective or a forensic scientist, and she's a therapist. So all of the things that we have everything covered. There's nothing you can, you know, you want to sneak and smoke Black and Milds or weed in the house, she gonna smell it. I'm gonna know where you got it, how you got it, how much you paid for, who you owe. You know, they can't get away with nothing. So they learned in the early stages, it's better to just fess up, be forward, give the mistake. And one of the things that blessed me, our oldest son, who, you know, he's only 16 years younger than me, you know, so we're in our 50s, early 50s, and we have children who are 35 and 36, you know, and then we have grandchildren. Our oldest grandchild is now 16 years old. Like it's bananas. And we just, you know, we look so young and we can't be happy. Anyway, y'all know what I'm saying. But yes. The fact of the matter is that they have seen us go through so much. So when I hear my oldest son say, I had to learn to forgive my father because the alternative was me not forgiving myself. And that told me that he had recognized that even when he makes mistakes, he can no longer put it on the childhood he didn't have, or the mom and dad that didn't do this or do that. One of the truths is, and that children, young people need to gather, you have to acknowledge that at some point in life, you have to be accountable for what you say and do.
That's right.
You know, the first book I wrote was called Don't Blame Me. And most people think that, you know, it was like an excuse, but no, it was an account, a journalistic account on what that attitude does to your life, to have a don't blame me, non-accountable, unaccountable attitude, and how dangerous that can be. So yeah, they hear us sharing our mistakes, and it becomes a lot easier for them to share their mistakes as well.
Excellent. And that book was Don't Blame Me.
Don't Blame Me, The Convict Chronicles. That's the first book I wrote. I have not caught up with Dr. Jolley yet, but I'm on his heels. We have 6 books out. 3 of them are children's books that will soon be on the YouTube animated circuit. We're excited about that. But the last book my wife and I wrote together is called Are You One of Them? One of Them, Bringing Bold Faith to a Broken World. We wrote that during the pandemic to just bring bold faith to a broken world. So it's a devotion that has done extremely well for us as well.
All right. Pastor?
It's great. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Pastor Pop. That's good. So here's, you know, you're speaking to a reality. Many parents, if not all parents, are in the process of raising children while they're still healing from their own childhood, from their own, you know, young adulthood. Right. So the question is, what are some strategies for parenting while you're still carrying your own unresolved wounds? Um, Reverend Queen, can you address this? How do you parent while still carrying your own wounds or healing from your own wounds? And what's the risk if you don't address those wounds while you're trying to parent?
Yeah, there are parents that avoid their unresolved trauma, and unfortunately, it shows up in your parenting. What you experienced as a child will show up in your parenting, even if you didn't like it. My husband talked about my daughter talking about me yelling. My dad was a yeller, and I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I said I was never going to be that parent, but I learned it because I experienced it and began to do it without even recognizing it was happening. And it took for my daughter to say something for me to shift. Like, I was shocked when she said it. It was like my eyes were open to the situation. But avoiding it, it affects how you parent, and it causes emotional distance between parents and children. And we have to give realistic expectations to our young people. So we have to tell them what we went through. And then when we see it happening, we have to be willing to shift and change. Because if we're not, we're creating unsafe spaces for them in the very space that should be a safe haven.
That's good. That's good. Dr. Jolley, how do you do that? How do you break cycles instead of repeating them?
One of the things I want to encourage people to do is to encourage and learn to give your child a critique without being critical or giving them a criticism, i.e., rather than when your child messes up, Sister Bertha said, what do you do when a child messes up? How do you handle it? Every child gonna mess up. Every adult gonna mess up, okay? We are human. So what I encourage parents to do, and I've done lots of parenting events over the years around the world. When you have a child who messes up, rather than saying, you know, that was a stupid thing for you to do. You are stupid. You just stupid for doing that. Rather than saying that, say, I am so disappointed that someone as smart as you made that choice. So what you did was you encouraged them while correcting the behavior and making it a teaching moment. Every issue should be a teaching moment. It should be a teaching moment. And one more thing I recommend is that you do not speak when you're angry. You wait till you calm down, because when you're angry, you're going to say something that you can't take back. You know, so whether it's in your relationship or with your children. So I've learned with my children to make sure I've thought through what I want to say. And I try and do what Jesus did. Give him a parable. I try and teach him. My son said, Dad's about to tell a story. Okay. Dad about to tell a story, because they know I'm going to tell them a story, an illustration, a anecdote to say, think about this. I want you to think about this. Would you do this or would you do that in your situation? So I can teach them how, you know, once there's a mistake and we all make it. The goal is not make it twice. See, once it's mistake, twice is stupid. So you don't want it to be stupid. Okay?
Stupid.
Yeah, no. Once it's a mistake, we all make it. Twice doing the same mistake twice is stupid. They didn't learn. So my job as a parent is to have some grace. Have some grace, because my mama told me, don't do that. That's not going to end well. It's not going to serve you well. And I did it anyway. Okay. And I had to pay a price for that. So my mama was, I'll give you a great example. My first child was born when I was a teenager. Now I was an older teen. I was 19, but I was still a teenager. And I never forget telling my mother, the night I had to tell her. She was eating some watermelon at the kitchen table. And I said, Mama, so-and-so is pregnant by me. She didn't look up. She didn't holler. She didn't scream. She kept eating her watermelon. And she said, well, you're going to have to take care of that baby and do what it takes to man up to take care of that child. So it was a learning moment. She didn't flip out. So when my daughter got pregnant in college, I didn't flip out. I remembered what my mama had, how she had handled it, and how she gave me grace. And I became a good father. I really did. Because Mama, I put my child, when I was still a young man, I put her in private school. I worked double jobs to make sure she had a good private school education. And I brought her to live with me. So, and I raised her. And so these are lessons that we can have grace. Have grace, have some patience, don't flip out. And 4 things I want y'all to write down. Number 1, when you have a critical conversation, first thing with your mate, your child, your boss, first, don't go in hot. Never have conversations when you're angry. Be friendly. That's first. Be friendly. And number 2, be frank about how this made you feel. That hurt my feelings, or I was disappointed. I expected better, whatever. Be frank about, don't be dilly-dallying. Tell this is how this made me feel. Number 3, be fair. Let them talk. Tell me, what were you thinking? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? And listen to their side. You might get an enlightenment that said, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And number 4, be focused on a win-win. Be focused on a win-win. So be friendly, be frank about your feelings, be fair, and be focused on a win-win.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. So you're talking about grace, but Dr. Queen, answer me this. How do you manage the pressure? He just great thing. He made a mistake, but he was, he gave grace to his daughter. But sometimes it works the opposite way. Sometimes you can want to make sure your child doesn't repeat your mistakes. And so sometimes you can put this pressure on them that sometimes can push them toward perfectionism. Right? So how do you avoid this perfection pressure while trying to give them grace and trying to raise them? Right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. And I think our context, at least the majority of us on this call, can speak to the expectations that are passed down to children when their parents are in some sort of spotlight. And I found myself in probably one of the most hypocritical spaces as a parent when, as a youth pastor, I was pouring into the lives of the children of our pastor and our ministers and deacons and deaconesses, and me and my wife are celebrating the fact that, there's these young people who look to us. I'm getting phone calls when a young person is struggling with X, Y, or Z, and kids are calling me because they're about to do something that may cost their virginity after I just preached on purity. Like, these are the real-time conversations I'm having, and I'm celebrating it. Meanwhile, our own children don't know if they can come to me about something that is the pressure of being the child of Pastor Queen, or being the child of Reverend Lena. Or so what happened was, I prided myself on telling other parents, hey, listen, God has blessed you to put other people in your child's life that can speak into your child probably the exact same thing that you would say, that they wouldn't hear from you because of the bias that's attached to your relationship. So I'm like, trust me that even as your child's youth pastor, that I'm going to give them probably the same or even better insight than you would give them as their parent. I was giving them that advice, but failing to do it myself, not realizing that there was a village of people that I could trust our children with. And then it hit me when I started seeing, our youngest son, he was gravitating to the leaders in Unashamed, and and they would come and tell me like, hey man, listen, your son is struggling with this. And instead of me going directly to him, I'm like, hey, when you get a chance, encourage him on this. And then they confided in me and my wife to let us know, hey, this is what's happening. And that became, we always talk about there's no longer a village. It's not the same as when we were younger, when the neighbor could beat you and send you home to get a beating from home too. That's a different type of village, but there is still a village if you put it together correctly. So to answer your question is when you have the people that can speak life into your child in the same way that you would, then that's how you can kind of avoid some of the mistakes, some of the pressure. Because it would be easy for me to say, I don't want you to go down that path. I've been down that path. You don't need to do, you're being hard-headed, la, la, la. And they're not going to hear nothing, because as soon as I went into that mode, they tuned me out. But lo and behold, somebody who I pour into has the influence on them to pour into them as well, and give them exactly what I would have gave them in a different cup that they can drink from. And that has become the blessing. I try my best to teach and train that in every aspect that we can. When my wife and I are talking to blended families or talking about parenting as a whole, get you some great mentors that you can trust to also be the, what you call that word where they're like surrogates, the surrogate parents that help you with your child as well. So that's what has helped us the most.
Reverend Dr. Queen, that is called the stranger from afar phenomenon. Okay. Every parent I know has a moment where their children can't hear it from them. They just can't hear it from them. And they need someone else who will say the exact same thing they said. Might dress it up a little bit, might eloquently say it, but it's the exact same thing, but they can hear it from them because that is not their parent. And so my daughter, when she was a teenager, had a bad attitude. Now, I'm the attitude guy. I'm Mr. Attitude. I wrote the book, An Attitude of Excellence. I wrote the book, A Setback Set Up for a Comeback, all about, I'm the attitude guy, but my daughter could not hear from me. I was on a phone call one day with Keith Harrell, the late, great speaker who wrote the book, Attitude is Everything, one of the greatest attitude experts in America. And I was talking to him, and he asked, how are your children? I said, my daughter, man, driving me crazy. She's if I tell her to go left, she go right. If I tell her to stop, she goes. If I tell her to go, she stops. She's whatever I tell her she does the app, she got a bad attitude. He said, give me a number. He talked to her for 15 minutes. Shift. She changed. It was amazing. And I realized it's called the attitude, it's called the stranger from afar phenomenon. The stranger from afar phenomenon.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to say, input determines output. One of the keys to us raising our children, and I was on an interview the other day, and I said, you know what? So blessed. I'm good. Me and all my kids are good right now. It ain't always been that story, okay? I can tell you right now. Ain't always been that story, but we are good, all of them. I'm good with them all right now. We got no major issues. But input determines output. So I'm trying to make sure I feed them positive thoughts. A thought of the day, I might text them. Something that I thought was important. We have a family text. I say, hey, I thought this was profound. I'm feeding them positive information. And one of the things I want to encourage parents to do is get resources that can inspire your children, motivate your children, uplift your children, that didn't come from you, but came from someone else who can bless them. So if y'all will go to wjyouthpower.com, wjyouthpower.com, I have my PBS special there for drug prevention, violence prevention, and scholastic achievement. It's a resource that can help your children if you get that PBS special and watch it with them, and then talk about it, and talk about drugs and alcohol and making wise choices and academic excellence. It can be a positive. So wjyouthpower.com.
wjyouthpower.com. Okay. Now we are going to move into what we call a rapid reflection round. I'm going to ask you all to take just a few seconds to answer these questions, and I'm going to call upon you. You can take a few seconds to answer this question or these questions. So we'll start with Miss Lena. One thing parenting taught you about yourself.
That grace and growth are lifelong processes for parents and for children.
I love that. I love that. Okay. Dr. Queen, a truth you had to unlearn.
A truth that I had to unlearn is that you do not have to spend your life trying to beat the system because you believe the world owes you something. Or was it supposed to be something that's really true? I'm not sure if I answered that right, but that's something that I had to unlearn. It was a truth for me at a certain time in my life. I believed the world owed me, and I was going to do anything I had to do to get it. Now, that's something that I've unlearned. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And my last question, Dr. Willie, let me move to this. One mistake that made you better.
Which one? You want to start with the day?
Just
or
one. Just one. Just one.
The day's mistake, or every day I got some new mistake that is making me better.
Just one.
Every day. One mistake that made me better was not listening to mama. Okay. I said it earlier. The older I get, the smarter my mama gets. Oh, yes. My mama told me everything that glitters ain't gold. And I said I knew better. I learned to listen to mama. And I'm encouraging young people to listen to your parents. You might not always agree with them, but they're always going to give you the best advice. Well, I got to share this. My grandson, on Sunday, he didn't want to go to church. He says, I'm not a Christian. I said, okay. I said, and he said, well, why were you always making me go to church? I said, because my mama told me, she said, son, there's some stuff down the road that's going to rock your world. She didn't use those words. She said, but they're going to be very difficult, and you're going to need faith. And I'm just trying to get you instilled in a foundation. You build a great house on a good foundation. She said, you're going to need faith. I said this to my grandson the other day. And then when he got to church, got to First Baptist, one of the other ministers, I had gone to the bathroom, caught him and gave him almost the exact same. That was the Lord saying, young man, you're young. If you're not 50 yet, you got some living to do that's gonna be very difficult. You better know the Lord.
All right.
Amen.
Pastor. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. We want to thank you guys for spending time with us, for sharing the gift of parenting, for your insights. We'll make sure to put your information, your bios in the notes when we post this, and so folks can get in touch with you. We hope this conversation has helped to challenge somebody, open up some dialogue, and we hope you guys share this with your friend group, with your parents. Don't let the conversation stop here. Let's let it continue. So thank you for joining us tonight. We thank God for you. And until next time, let's walk in the Spirit.
And live in the truth.
Live in the truth.
That's real impact. That's right.
Amen.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
Yeah, bless
Thank
y'all.
you for joining us.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.